Marshall, what are you taking a look at?
Yeah, I, along with the rest of America, am obsessed with the Elizabeth Holmes Theranos story. I loved Bad Blood. It's on our Audible account. John Kerry at the Wall Street Journal, really good reporting, really compelling story. There's a movie that's coming out, all the different parts. But what I really want to focus on today, especially as the trial goes on, is the broader narrative of what it says about America and even the technology industry, because the number one thing that if you talk to anyone in Silicon Valley about Elizabeth Holmes, they would say, whoa, 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 that's not on us. She was not really funded by traditional venture capital. Traditional healthcare wasn't engaged in her. The only VCs who actually put money into the company were actually people who she personally knew through familial connections. So from that perspective, it's not quite clear that the story of Theranos is really a story about Silicon Valley. Rather, I think it's a story about the American political and foreign policy establishment that in a weird way intersects with the conversation that we were just having around Afghanistan. Because if you actually look at the board of Theranos and the folks who were involved, it's actually a little incredible. And it actually shows that there's a world where Elizabeth Holmes should have become a politician and not tried her hand at launching a massive startup because she had multiple secretaries of state.
We have a graphic of that actually. Let's put it up there on the screen.
Yeah, this list is incredible. We have George Shultz, who famously besmirched his legacy when he turned against his grandson, who was a whistleblower. He passed away recently, so rest in peace, of course. But it was a really horrible way to end his legacy. You had General Jim Mad Dog Mattis.
Right.
You had Henry Kissinger.
Right.
You had all these people who went all in on this company, and you have to ask yourself, why were these the people who you wanted to have on your board? Why was this the way this actually went down? The part that's actually really fascinating too is the interplay with the war in Afghanistan. The reason why James Mattis was a part of all of this is because she met with him back when he was still in the military, because the idea of part of her pitch, and this ended up being part of what's fraudulent about Theranos, was we are going to use this blood testing device on the battlefield.
Right, yeah.
I remember in the documentary about the actual what went down, there was literally, she had a flag that had supposedly flown in Afghanistan. It was an American battle flag in her actual office. So there was this perfect tie between the foreign policy establishment, military establishment, all these different people. And what just really, I hate to say grinds my gears, but actually grinds my gears is this is really the closing era, I think, of a time when the elite of this country had real credibility to spend, where you could say, listen, I was Secretary of State, so you want me on my politically neutral board.
Right.
Or I was a general of an apolitical military, and I can engage on the board. It really was the closing period for this very specific moment. And I think luckily enough, we won't be doing these types of things moving forward. I don't think people would say, oh, wow, you know, Mike Pompeo is on my board. That's a really great thing. Or, hey, this politician is on my board. Anthony Blinken, he may do some consulting work, which I largely have no problem with, but this is not going to be the scenario where there's any credibility here. And I think the last part that I'm always really just thinking about here is that you had this scenario where this set of people was so obsessed with gaining into something that seemed to be moving forward, technology, but it was really susceptible to a specific pitch from a very specific founder. This was, well, she dresses like Steve Jobs. She looks a little different. She plays masculine and plays the boys. This is very much an artifact of that real quick, lean-in Sheryl Sandberg 2013 era. And something that you've seen discussed in our reporting on WeWork and all these other companies in Silicon Valley is that this 2010s period is really about the cult of the founder. And that critique goes too far sometimes. I think Jeff Bezos, regardless of how you think about him as a political actor, was really, really essential when it came to the success of Amazon. You know, Elon Musk, everything he's done has been very key to this. Mark Zuckerberg, same thing of Facebook. But with the success of those companies, it really left a moment of vulnerability where you could have people like Adam Neumann, like Elizabeth Holmes say to themselves, hey, I'm going to design myself in a certain way. I will be able to con billions of dollars of capital and take honestly well-meaning but 90-year-old plus people, like former Secretary of State George Shultz, on for a ride there. And it's just really important we put it close to this because, you know, I'm not going to name names here, but I was at a dinner recently where I actually very depressingly learned that former politicals in the Trump administration are going around trying to find jobs at defense tech companies, because as we are talking about moving past this Afghanistan era, we're obviously moving to a point where there's great power competition.
Right.
And they're just saying, hey, like, let's get in on the next thing. And I hope that we can just really just draw a line there and say that if we could agree with this class of people doesn't know what it's doing about Afghanistan, they don't know what they're doing when it comes to technology investment.
It's an interesting point they make there, because it's true. George Shultz and Kissinger and Mattis and the rest of these people, former director of the CDC. Let that sink in. Former director of the CDC was on the board of a fake blood company. Same thing. Former Secretary of Defense William Perry. Former retired U.S. Navy Gary Roughhead. Two former U.S. senators. The former CEO of Wells Fargo. This is the who's who. Financial crisis, of Afghanistan, of the entire post-war international order. It's like, what does that tell you about what exactly these people are and the judgment that they have about people? Not a good look, right? It really isn't. If all it takes is a charismatic woman with a fake deep voice and a sweater on to fool you into one of the most improbable devices ever conceived, which was clearly fake and which they clearly did not do their diligence on. I mean, the evidence for Theranos not working was there in the first 6 months.
Her advisor told her, this is the quote about her, she talked to her advisor at Stanford. She said, this doesn't work.
Yeah, when she was 19, right? Yeah, it was
this isn't, because I think it's oftentimes easy to not even make excuses, because sometimes startups in Silicon Valley is really effing hard.
Yeah.
But this was actually a case, and once again, this is why traditional venture capital was passed. This is why traditional people in medicine
this thing
passed.
is fake as hell.
But once again, Henry Kissinger is thinking, hey, I'd love to get a nice little feather in my cap and be a tech investor, because that's cool.
No, but that's the problem. And then the fact that they fell for this so clearly just says so much to me about these people. And it really is one of these things where you have to look at the mindset that they brought to whenever they were developing this post-war system and Afghanistan as exactly the same thing. It's about wishful thinking. It's about having way too much hubris about what you actually know. It's about not doing your real due diligence whenever it comes, and it leads to a total and complete disaster. And George Shultz is the only one who took real reputational damage after Theranos, and that's because he literally threw his own grandson under the bus, which is freaking crazy. If you guys haven't gone and you hadn't read Bad Blood by John Carreyrou or listened to what is it, The Dropout, I think?
Yes.
Which is ABC, great podcast, and I highly recommend them. Which is that when you look at this and you see how clearly that the whole thing was completely fake from the beginning, it just makes it even more astounding, the level of con artistry that was able to spiral up to the top. Not only did she fake her way into becoming a billionaire, she faked these people using their credibility to make it so that it was undeniable that she could make fake deals with Walgreens. And every time I cover this, I want to make sure that we actually highlight who some of the real victims are. The victims are the people who used Theranos blood kits and got bad medical diagnoses and then had all sorts of took the wrong drugs they were supposed to. It's not just the financial fraud.
Cancer diagnosis, terrible diagnoses.
Like cancer or diabetes, whatever. Those are the people I think about the most and who Elizabeth Holmes really hurt, allegedly, for her lawyers.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.